So we are just seconds away, potentially, from this starting, this dual news conference with President Trump and visiting German Chancellor Angela Merkel. You're seeing at the center of your screen there to the left, the brand new National Security Advisor, John Bolton, just pointing out a few people who are pulling into place as we sit for this. I'm Harris. Here's Dana.
This is a Fox News alert. We are awaiting a major news conference with President Trump and German Chancellor Angela Merkel, capping off another wild week in Washington. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and this is the Daily Briefing. We have Fox team coverage. Ari Fleischer and Chris Sarwalt are standing by with analysis, but we begin with Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts, live in the East Room. John.
Dana, good afternoon to you. I think we're probably just a couple of minutes away now from the president and the German chancellor coming into the East Room. The dignitaries are making their way in. Here comes the vice president along with Kellyanne Conway. So that's typically an indication that we're just a short amount of time away. The discussions between the president and the German chancellor followed very much along the same lines in terms of issues as the president's conversations with Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, earlier this week. At the top of the list, trade and whether or not the president will extend waivers on steel and aluminum tariffs as of May 1st to the EU, and then on the Iran nuclear deal, whether or not the U.S. is going to pull out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Macron earlier this week, and I'm sure Angela Merkel will have done as well in her meetings with the president, encouraged the president to stay in. Macron proposing a third way that leave the JCPOA in place, but at the same time craft a second deal that would cover Iran's long-term nuclear goals, its ballistic missile program, as well as its destabilizing behavior in the Middle East. The president did appear to warm to that idea, but he's got a deadline of May the 12th to make a decision whether or not he is going to again sign waivers for Iran or if he's going to pull out of the JCPOA, Dana. So that's why these talks have reached such a sense of urgency between the United States and its European allies, because our European allies firmly believe that the Iran nuclear deal is, at least for the time being, keeping Iran from pursuing a nuclear weapon, and it wants to see that stay in place.
John, I have to say that your voice would work very well if we were covering a golf tournament as well, because you are excellent at being there in the middle of all of that, all those dignitaries, and answering some questions for us. I know the president and Angela Merkel are about to come out, so let me just ask you one other question. This has been a very heavy foreign policy 10 days with Abe from Japan, and then you had Macron from France. Today's visit from Angela Merkel, and we just found out also that the president will visit the UK on July 13th.
Correct. And then in the middle of all of this, what happened with Moon Jae-in, the president of South Korea, and Kim Jong-un and Panmunjom earlier today, in which they said they hope to craft a peace deal to finally put to rest the Korean War after 65 years of a ceasefire by the end of this year. And the North Korea is making a pledge to dismantle its nuclear program. I had an opportunity to throw a question about that to the president in the Oval Office a little while ago. I said to him, North Korea has played so many successive U.S. administrations. What's to prevent Kim Jong-un, we just got the 2-minute warning, from playing the United States again? And the president said it's true that past administrations have been played like a fiddle by North Korea, but we have a different leader now in the United States, and he's a leader who's not going to get played. But we'll see, because he thinks that North Korea is being sincere. He told me that he doesn't think Kim Jong-un is playing. But Dana, if North Korea actually went through with something and they did what they promised, that would be a unique event. So we'll see where this is going.
It certainly would be. Ari Fleischer is a former White House press secretary. He's with me now, and just in the time we have before the leaders come out, I did want to ask you, Ari, about this moment in terms of the Iran deal. You had Macron there this week. He thinks that the president is going to pull out. Angela Merkel probably won't be able to get too much further, and I think that since they're all walking out there, right there in the bottom left, that's the new ambassador to Germany, Rick Grenell, just confirmed yesterday, and we'll listen in to President Trump and Angela Merkel.
Thank you very much. Today, I'm honored to welcome Chancellor Angela Merkel back to the White House. Over the past year, I have enjoyed getting to know the Chancellor very well through many productive calls, discussions, and meetings. We have a great relationship. Chancellor, I want to congratulate you once again on your election victory, 4th term in office. It's really something. Congratulations. We're also pleased to have our newly confirmed United States ambassador to Germany, Richard Grinnell, outstanding man, and he's with us today. And Richard, congratulations. Do a great job, and I know you will. Thank you. This confirmation was long overdue. We've been waiting a long time for Richard to get his clearance, and he got it, and it's going to be special. But we have a lot of people that are waiting approval, and the Democrats have been treating us extremely unfairly, and they're going to have to move it along. For decades, the alliance and friendship between Germany and the United States has advanced the cause of peace, prosperity, and freedom. Today, our nations face a wide array of shared challenges and opportunities, and I am confident that we will meet them together with the same strength and resolve that has always defined the United States-German friendship. This afternoon, I want to congratulate the Republic of Korea on its historic summit with North Korea. We're encouraged by President Moon and Kim Jong-un's expressed goal of complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. I will be meeting with Kim Jong-un in the coming weeks. We look forward to that, and hopefully it will be productive. I want to thank Chancellor Merkel for her leadership in our campaign of maximum pressure on the North Korean regime, which has helped us to reach this important step, this moment where we are right now. It's taken a long time, many, many decades to get here. Let's see what happens. We seek a future of peace, prosperity, and harmony for the whole Korean Peninsula, unlocking not only a brighter future for the people of Korea, but for the people of the world. However, in pursuit of that goal, we will not repeat the mistake of past administrations. Maximum pressure will continue until denuclearization occurs. I look forward to our meeting. It should be quite something. In our meetings today, the Chancellor and I discussed Iran. The Iranian regime fuels violence, bloodshed, and chaos all across the Middle East. We must ensure that this murderous regime does not even get close to a nuclear weapon, and that Iran ends its proliferation of dangerous missiles and its support for terrorism. No matter where you go in the Middle East, wherever there's a problem, Iran is right there. As we eradicate what little remains of ISIS in Syria, we must also ensure that Iran does not profit from our success. To prevent this outcome, it is essential that our coalition and regional partners step up their financial and military contributions to the anti-ISIS efforts. Some of these countries are immensely wealthy, and they're going to start paying for it and paying for this tremendous help that we've given them. The Chancellor and I also had a productive discussion about the security of Europe and the responsibility of European nations to properly contribute to their own defense. We addressed the need to strengthen NATO and the NATO alliance by ensuring that all member states honor their commitment to spend 2% and hopefully much more of GDP on defense. It is essential that our NATO allies increase their financial contributions so that everyone is paying their fair share. We look forward to seeing further progress towards improved burden sharing. A lot of people have stepped up, a lot of countries have stepped up, and they're going to have to continue to do so. Tremendous amount of additional money has been raised for NATO over the past 16 months, and I'm proud to have helped, but they have to keep going. In this age of international crime, smuggling, terrorism, and trafficking, it is also essential that we have strong border security and immigration control. This is fundamental to national defense. Also vital to our security and that of our allies is America's ability to maintain a strong and robust manufacturing base, which we really are doing in the United States. We have additional steel plants opening. Steel plants are expanding. Aluminum is doing great. A lot of things are happening that were never going to happen before. That's why we must have a fair and reciprocal trading relationship with our friends and partners. We have a trade deficit in goods with the European Union of approximately, hard to believe, $151 billion a year, including a $50 billion annual trade deficit in autos and auto parts. I'm committed to working with Chancellor Merkel to reduce barriers for United States exports, to remedy these trade imbalances, and deepen our economic ties. We also welcome the Chancellor's partnership in promoting major reforms to international organizations like the World Trade Organization, which has not treated the United States well, to protect sovereignty and ensure fairness. The close cooperation across multiple fronts, military, intelligence, economic, academic, is critical to the defense of our civilization as we know it. And the close friendship between the German and American people enriches the lives of millions and millions of our citizens. Chancellor, thank you again for visiting the White House. It's an honor to have you. Our alliance is strong and thriving, and together we will overcome shared obstacles, seize upon shared opportunities, and build an incredible future for our country and our people. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you very much.
Ja, danke schön. Ich möchte mich vor allen Dingen für den Empfang hier heute bedanken im Weißen Haus.
For the very warm reception here in the White House and for giving us this opportunity to have an exchange of views. This is my first visit after the re-election to a country outside of Europe, and I thought it was very important to underline that for Germany the transatlantic ties are of prime importance. We are very much aware of the fact that these transatlantic ties are for us of crucial, of indeed existential importance. These transatlantic ties have given a great contribution to our reunification. The first part of my life I spent on the other side of the Iron Curtain, and the fact that it was possible for our country to reunite is essentially due to the United States and their contribution, and this will be most important also for our future cooperation that is more urgently needed than ever in view of the turbulences all over the world. So Germany will continue to be a reliable partner in NATO, in our alliance, is a reliable partner within the European Union, all the more so since today we fight against nuclearization of Iran, against terrorism, against ISIS in Iraq, in Syria, against terrorism in Afghanistan or in Africa, and we depend urgently on each other. Today we meet at a point in time where it has become very clear that the strength of the American president, where he really saw to it that the sanctions against North Korea are abided by, are respected, has opened new possibilities, opened new ways. This first meeting between Kim Jong-un and the South Korean President Moon is a first step on a road that will hopefully lead into a better future. We Germans know only too well what it means after years of separation, after years of division, to have these first contacts, but we will continue to be vigilant to see to it that denuclearization is stopped of North Korea and that a nuclear-free zone is established on the Korean Peninsula. We think that this is essential. We will have to see also in our fight against the Iranian attempts to become nuclear will go on. We are of the opinion that the JCPOA is a first step that has contributed to slowing down their activities in this particular respect, to also establish a better verification and monitoring process. But we also think, from a German perspective, that this is not sufficient in order to see to it that Iran's ambitions are curbed and are contained. It is most important to see that Iran, after all, is trying to exert a geopolitical influence in Syria, in Lebanon, and in Iraq, and we have to see to it that this attempt at influence is curbed, is contained, and that beyond JCPOA, reliability can be established, and I think solution for the region as a whole. Beyond that and over and above that, we also addressed the tasks that we see ahead on defense. Germany in 2019 is going to share of 1.3 of its GDP on defense. That has been an increase over the past few years. We haven't yet met the target where we should be, but we are getting closer to the target, to the guideline that we've set for ourselves in Wales. On trade, I think it's most important to see that very close relations on trade exist between Germany and the European Union on the one hand and the United States on the other. We want fair trade. We want a trade that is in line with the multilateral trading system of WTO, but we also acknowledge that for many, many years WTO has not been able to bring about international agreements, so bilateral agreements may well replace that. That's something that we, on behalf of the European Union, already have done and have negotiated with a number of countries over the past few years, so I can well envisage such negotiations with the United States as well. But obviously, that has been reconciled, and I would also like to point out that Germany, on the one hand, has very close trade relations with you. The President obviously is not satisfied with the trade surplus. We have already been able to reduce that. Our trade surplus is with the United States, but we still have a long way to go. But the United States, also due to the tax reform, again has become a very interesting place to invest for our companies, and we can say with great pride that not only hundreds of thousands of cars are exported from Germany to the United States, but that from the US to the rest of the world, hundreds of thousands of cars that are built here in the States are exported to the rest of the world, with creating American jobs. And I believe that the workers here have very good working conditions. So that, again, is another bond that ties our two countries together. We will continue to discuss those trade issues. We will have the NATO meeting in the summer. We will meet again there. And let me say in conclusion that apart from the political relations that are very close, and well, we sometimes may look at issues differently, but generally around on the basis of friendship, on partnership, we are linked by ties in the world of science, in the world of culture. We still host the largest number of troops. Ever since 1945, about 17 million members of the U.S. military were stationed in Germany, and a lot of them have established very close ties, very close friendships with Germans, and I'm delighted to see that now the ambassador can very soon, when he's in Germany, work on this basis, and we're delighted that we finally have an ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, we'll take some questions. Blake Berman, yes? Blake?
Thank you, Mr. President. Chancellor Merkel, I'll ask a couple questions of the President first. I want to ask you, let's step over, it's crowded in here. I want to ask you about a couple comments that you made in the Oval Office earlier, in which you said about North Korea that they've played the U.S. in the past like a fiddle, but that's not going to happen to us. Do you, as it relates to hopefully getting peace on the Korean Peninsula, denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, do you feel as if you need to be the closer in that deal? Do you want to be the closer in that deal, or do you think that's something that is shared by all of the major stakeholders, all of the world leaders within that region? And secondly, indulge us if you might, you said that the relationship with North Korea has been strong, or one of the words you used. Have you spoken with Kim Jong-un himself, or do you plan on speaking with him?
I don't want to comment on that.
Do you plan on speaking with him before?
We have a very good working relationship. We're setting up a meeting. Things have changed very radically from a few months ago. You know, the name calling and a lot of other things. We get a kick every once in a while out of the fact that I'll be watching people that failed so badly over the last 25 years explaining to me how to make a deal with North Korea. I get a big, big kick out of that. But we are doing very well. I think that something very dramatic could happen. They're treating us with great respect. And you know what's going on with South Korea, and I think President Moon of South Korea was very generous in saying that we helped make the Olympics a great success because of the fact that, as you know, there was a tremendous animosity, there was a tremendous problem going on, and all of a sudden people started buying tickets because whole different feeling when North said, we'd love to go to the Olympics. So a lot of good things are happening with respect to North Korea. President Obama told me when I had the one meeting with him, he said, that's your biggest problem. That's going to be the most difficult thing you have. And honestly, I wish it was handled earlier. I wish it were handled by another administration years ago. I'm not just talking about President Obama. I go back to any administration you want. But over the last 25 years, this should have been handled a long time ago, not now. This should not have been left for me to handle. But we will handle it. We're handling it well, and hopefully there'll be peace for North Korea, South Korea, Germany. I mean, everything is included. Japan, the chancellor has been very helpful in the maximum pressure campaign, as I said, really very helpful. So have many other nations. President Xi of China has been really good at the border. Everyone's surprised at how tight he clamped down. Everyone said that he'd just talk about it, he wouldn't do it. Well, he did it, and he did it out of a relationship that we have, and also out of the fact that we're negotiating trade deals, and I think that's also very important to him. Hopefully we'll come up with something that's good for both countries. So I think some very good things can happen with respect to North Korea. We're setting up meetings now. We're down to 2 countries as to a site, and we'll let you know what that site is. Do you have a question for the Chancellor?
Just to follow up real quickly, do you feel like it's your responsibility for this to eventually get settled between North and South Korea?
I think I have a responsibility. I think other presidents should have done it. I think the responsibility has fallen on the shoulders of the President of the United States. And I think we have, I think I have a responsibility to see if I can do it. And if I can't do it, it'll be a very tough time for a lot of countries and a lot of people. It's certainly something that I hope I can do for the world. This is beyond the United States. This is a world problem, and it's something that I hope I'm able to do for the world. Okay? Please.
Thank you. And Chancellor,
Von der FAZ.
Chancellor Merkel.
Was? Ach so.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Boris, thank you very much. I'm just wondering if you've been given any assurances that the European Union will be exempt from steel and aluminum tariffs come Tuesday, the May 1st deadline. Did President Trump tell you what he may or may not do? Thank you.
That question.
Der Präsident wird entscheiden.
The President will decide. That is very clear. We had an exchange of views on the current state of affairs of the negotiations and the respective assessments on where we stand on this. And the decision lies with the President.
Herr Ross.
Okay?
Mr. Ross, please.
Thank you. I have a question for the Chancellor, but I'd like to start with a question on Iran for you, Mr. President. After a long day of talks with you, President Macron went to Congress, warned of a new war in the Middle East, and asked the world and the United States to respect the sovereignty of all countries, including Iran. In the absence of a new agreement, are you prepared to use military force to rein in the nuclear program in Iran, or do you have another plan B that is not an agreement and not military force?
I don't talk about whether or not I'd use military force. It's not appropriate to be talking about. But I can tell you this. They will not be doing nuclear weapons. That I can tell you. Okay? They're not going to be doing nuclear weapons. You can bank on it. Okay. Please.
Frau Bundeskanzlerin, noch vor einem Jahr.
Madam Chancellor, only a year ago, people in Berlin were very much concerned about President Trump not being ready to show toughness against Russia. Now you've come to Washington with the concern that a new round of sanctions against the so-called oligarchs may well be detrimental to the German economy. Have you asked the President to exempt German companies from these sanctions? And are you generally worried that the United States because the president is trying to be toughest with President Putin may well change completely and may well be treating Russia too harshly without coordinating with you. Well, we discussed Ukraine, and here we work together very closely against the illegitimate actions of Russia due to, for example, annexation of Crimea and also the situation they caused in eastern Ukraine. I'm very pleased to say that we work very closely with the American administration in complementing the Minsk format. And the sanctions very much are a thing of the Congress, and we work together with the representative of the administration here also, and very closely with the Treasury. We exchange views on what sort of secondary effects that may have, and looking at the conflicts we have with Russia, for example, in Syria, there is a wide degree of agreement, and no one is interested in not having good relations with Russia. But wherever there are conflicts, wherever there are certain things happening, as for example in Ukraine, we have to call a spade, and the principle of territorial integrity of a country such as Ukraine is one that needs to be upheld and that needs to be enforced. But Madam Chancellor, the exchange, was it satisfactory on these issues between America and Europe? Is it as closely aligned as you want? Yes. Whenever I have questions, I can ask those questions, and I believe that the exchange is there. Again, sanctions have been adopted by Congress. We pointed out to what sort of effects that has. I believe that our finance minister and the Treasury have talked about this yesterday when they met with other finance ministers at the financing for Syria conference yesterday. And whenever I have problems, I can talk to our American counterparts.
Ben Kennedy, please. CBN.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, two questions for you. The first one's on Ronny Jackson. It's been 1 day since he bowed out. I know it's only been less than 24 hours. Have you have a new nominee for the Secretary for the Department of Veteran Affairs? And my second question is on the U.S. Embassy set to open in Jerusalem in 3 weeks. Have you decided if you do plan to attend? And also, can you confirm if Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin is leading a delegation that could include your son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Ivanka Trump?
Ronny Jackson, Admiral Doctor, is one of the finest men that I've met over the last long period of time. High quality family. I just met them. And I explained what happened. I explained that Washington can be a very mean place. You don't know about that, Chancellor. A nasty place. The false accusations that were made about him by Senator Tester from a great state, I don't think that state is going to put up with it. These were false accusations about a great man, about a man who has a son who's a top student at Annapolis, about a man that's given his life to this country and to the military, a brave man. He would have been a great leader. To say the kind of things that he said, you had President Obama giving him an A+ report. You had President Bush giving him an A+ report. You have President Trump giving him an A+ report, and to make statements of things that most people said never happened, never even happened. Calling them names was, to me, a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. And I think it's something we learn from. I called him today. I said, in a certain way, you're in a very big way, you're an American hero, because you've exposed the system for some horrible things. I've had it happen to me with the Russian collusion hoax. It's a hoax. But I came into the job understanding that things happen. He didn't. He's a great doctor. He's a great admiral. He didn't really think a thing like this could happen. And I think it's a disgrace. So I just want to comment on that. And actually, I'm glad you asked the question. I think this man has been treated, he's an American hero, and I think he's been treated very unfairly. Okay?
As far as a nomination, have you put forward a new nomination yet?
I have many people that want the position, if you can believe it. With all of this being said, We have some excellent people, some very political people, some people that a thing like that wouldn't happen, or if it did happen, I guess they'll handle it somewhat differently. But we have many people that want that job. We're very proud of the job we've done for the veterans. The veterans have been, we've gotten accountability approved, which is something that for years they've been trying to get. As you know, they couldn't get it approved. We got accountability. So that when somebody treats our veterans badly, we can fire them so fast, almost as fast as they fire people in Germany. We'll get rid of them. And I will tell you, we're getting choice. We're putting choice in very, very strongly. We have tremendous support in the Senate for that. But I have a lot of people that want the job. We're doing a great job over there for the vets. And, you know, that was one of the things that to me was the most important. We had tremendous support from the vets. We're getting great reports. But getting a thing such as accountability done, we'll be soon getting choice done. Meaning, if a veteran stands online and can't get to a doctor for various reasons, they're going to a private doctor, and this country is going to pay. They're not going to wait 9 weeks online for a cure to something that could have been very easy to cure, and then they end up dying from it. So we're going to, I'm very proud of what we've done, and I will tell you, your new head of the VA is going to be very exceptional. We have some exceptional people that want to do the job. Okay?
Before I get to Chancellor Merkel, I wanted to backtrack to the U.S. Embassy opening up in Jerusalem. You said in the past that you would like to go.
So they came to me. This is a little bit about government. Somebody said, could I tell this story? And they came to me with a proposal for a $1 billion embassy in Jerusalem. And the papers, Mike Pence can tell you, the papers were put before me to sign an application for more than $1 billion to build an embassy. I said, what are you talking about, $1 billion? You know, most embassies are like a single story. And they said, yes, sir, it's $1 billion. And I had my name half signed. Then I noticed the figure, and I never got to the word Trump. I had Donald signed, but I never got to the word Trump. And I called my ambassador, who's a great lawyer. Most people in business know David Friedman. He's the ambassador to Israel and loves Israel, loves our country, loves Israel too. And I said, what's this $1 billion? He said, I can build it for $150,000. I said, what? He said, I can build it for $150,000, the embassy. We have a building, we have the site, we already own the site, we own the building. I can take a corner of the building, and for $150,000, we can fix it up, make it beautiful, open our embassy. Instead of in 10 years from now, we can open it up in 3 months. And that's what we did. But I said, David, let's not go from $1 billion to 150,000. Let's go to 300,000-400,000. And that's what we did. We would take a piece of the building. It's going to be beautiful. And it'll be somewhat temporary, but it could be for many years, because by the time they build it the other way, it's going to be many, many years. They were looking for sites. We already have a site, and we have a great site. The site's better than anything you could imagine. But that's the way government works. They were going to spend $1 billion, and we're going to spend much less than $500,000. Could have done it for much less than that, but I said, let's make it really nice. So that's what it is. I may go, very proud of it. Jerusalem has been a subject that's been promised for many years, as you know, the embassy in Jerusalem. It's been promised for many, many years by presidents. They all made campaign promises, and they never had the courage to carry it out. I carried it out. So I may go. It's getting ready to open. And I do want to tell that story, though, because there are a couple of people that got to see it, including Mike, but others, where literally they were going to spend $1 billion, and we're spending a tiny, tiny fraction of that in the hundreds of thousands of dollars instead. And it will be very nice. Maybe it'll be nicer than $1 billion building. Okay? For the Chancellor, please.
Well, Chancellor, I wanted to ask about the Iran nuclear deal. You just heard President Trump say that Iran will not be restarting the nuclear program. You can bank on it. Do you fear that if the U.S. backs out, that Iran will restart their nuclear program? And also, you're the second European Union leader, or European leader, to stop here at the White House this week. What improvements did you recommend to the president that needs to be changed in order to keep the U.S. in the deal?
Nun gut, ich habe meine Position deutlich
Well,
gemacht.
I set out my position, and that is that I believe that obviously this agreement is anything but perfect. It will not solve all the problems with Iran. It is one piece of the mosaic, one building block, if you like, on which we can build up this structure. And that when the United Kingdom, France and Germany work together with the American colleagues, this was brought about, and we will now see what sort of decisions are made by American partners. I said that the whole of the region obviously is of prime importance to us because it's not 1,000 kilometers away, as it is the case, for example, between the USA and Syria. But Syria and Iran are countries that are right on our doorstep. So that is of prime importance for us, and we will continue to be in very close talks on this.
Frau Dunz.
Mrs. Dunz, please.
Christina Dunz von der
Christina Dunz from Rheinische Post. Madam Chancellor, you used to describe America as a destination of your sort of what you ever wanted to be. And now it's said in Germany by you that Europe actually has to take its destiny in its own hands and that you cannot rely on the United States supporting you all the time. Have you talked with the President about this development, where this unhappy development that drifting apart, and should not you in many ways deliver also on this promise of significantly increasing the defense spending? And addressed to you, Mr. President, a lot of people are irritated by the way that you fulfill this most important job that exists in the rest of the world with certain aggressive Twitter messages and so on. I want to ask you whether, and certain threats that you make, does this mean that in the future there will be less compromise struck by the United States, less reconciliation? And how will you decide on the 1st of May when it is about a possible extension of the exemption for terrorists? What is your position on this, Mr. President? Will there be a trade war with this big bloc Europe, or do you see an opportunity of actually not going into such a trade war? Well, I think for a lot of people in Germany, but also in many other countries, people wish and love to go to the United States. We have just said there are more than 40 million people who have their roots in Germany, in Europe, here in the United States. Also for many people in Germany, in Europe, America is a great country. And even though we may see matters differently on certain political issues, we have to address that. We have to talk about this. But this land of freedom, this great country, obviously still remains very attractive. So I continue to say that. And I said, yes, Germany and Europe have to take their destiny into their own hands, because we can no longer, as we used to during the period of the Cold War, during the years when Germany was divided, rely on America coming and helping us. America is still helping us, but step by step, we will simply have to increase our contribution to, and America has been very much engaged, very broadly engaged in parts of the world that are far away from America, and the people of America too have said, well, what's in it for us? So the President is saying you ought to have some more burden sharing. So in a way, we're maturing, we're growing out of a role where after the Second World War, people were rather happy for Germany not becoming too engaged, not too active, because during the period of National Socialism, we created such incredible injustice in the world. And but this post-war period is at an end. It's more than this post-war period is well, that's essentially 70 years ago. So we as Germans have to learn to assume more responsibility. We're proud to be the second largest troop contributor in NATO. We've done a lot over the past few years, obviously from the President's perspective, not perhaps fast enough, but I would say, as German Chancellor, we have made important steps in the right direction, and we will continue to do so. We cannot rely, if conflicts are on our doorstep, for others to step in, and we ourselves don't have to give a contribution. And this contribution will have to increase over the next few years to come. That has something to do with military engagement, with defense spending, with combating and tackling root causes of flight, but also with the readiness to become more engaged in diplomacy. Germany, for example, for the first time time is part and parcel of the so-called small group. It has just had a meeting in Paris on Syria, together with the US, with the UK, with Saudi Arabia, and we want to give our contribution to this as well. It's our obligation, it's our duty. I don't think that we ought to complain about this. We have to learn, as a big country, as an economically successful country, as the President says, you're economically successful, but militarily and politically you don't wish to do so much. We have to learn to assume our role, and there are differences of opinion. We, as friends, can discuss that openly.
Thank you, Chancellor. We need a reciprocal relationship, which we don't have. The United States right now has a trade deficit with the European Union of $151 billion. And the Chancellor and I have discussed it today at length, and we're working on it, and we want to make it more fair, and the Chancellor wants to make it more fair. Same thing with NATO. We have a far greater burden than we should have. Other countries should be paying more. And I'm not saying Germany alone. Other countries should be paying more. I mean, we're protecting Europe, and yet we pay by far more than anybody else. And NATO is wonderful, but it helps Europe more than it helps us. And why are we paying a vast majority of the costs? So we're working on those things. It's been unfair. And I don't blame the Chancellor, and I don't blame Germany. I don't even blame the European Union. I blame the people that preceded me for allowing this to happen. There's no way we should have a trade deficit of $151 billion. So we're going to make it reciprocal. We're going to make it a much more fair situation. And I think in the end, everybody's going to be very happy. I think both countries, I view this as many countries, but looking at it as one bloc, will really benefit. There's tremendous potential between the European Union and the United States, and I think that's going to happen. There's also tremendous benefit to NATO when people pay what they have to be paying. Some countries actually pay more than they're supposed to. They think the United States is, I've been told by numerous countries, Poland being one. Poland is great. I mean, they pay actually a little bit more than they're supposed to be paying or have to pay because they feel the United States is more than carrying the load. And perhaps they feel it's not fair, but it's something we very much appreciate. But I believe that, you know, when I look at the numbers in Germany and some other countries, they may not like Donald Trump, but you have to understand, that means I'm doing a good job because I'm representing the United States. Angela is representing Germany. She's doing a fantastic job. My predecessors did not do a very good job. But we'll try and catch you, okay? We'll try. We're going to have a reciprocal relationship, and it's going to be something that benefits all of us, okay? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Angela. Thank you very much.
That's President Trump and Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, finishing up a press conference that my next guest will tell us what he thinks about it feeling like a real normal day at the White House. Ari Fleischer is a former White House press secretary and a Fox News contributor and Fox News politics editor. Chris Stirewalt, the editor of Halftime Report, joins me as well. The press conference certainly felt very cordial, genial, like everybody was getting along, Ari.
Yeah, it was like a normal day at the White House. It was not a stormy day, to use an expression. It was just routine questions, diplomacy, the kinds of things you would hope and think would always come up at a White House press conference with a foreign head of state standing shoulder to shoulder. And the president talked about all the things you hope he would, and given what happened in Korea this morning, he actually has a lot to talk about.
And Chris, we are going to get to Korea just after this soundbite. I wanted to play on Iran because that was really sort of there's big foreign policy news at the White House all week. Certainly Angela Merkel came to try to talk about Iran as well. Take a listen to what he said earlier on that.
The Chancellor and I discussed Iran. The Iranian regime fuels violence, bloodshed, and chaos all across the Middle East. We must ensure that this murderous regime does not even get close to a nuclear weapon, and that Iran ends its proliferation of dangerous missiles and its support for terrorism, no matter where you go in the Middle East. Wherever there's a problem, Iran is right there.
Chris, Emmanuel Macron from France was here earlier in the week trying to talk to the president, and I think that he decided he didn't change the president's mind, and it is perhaps Angela Merkel realized that she was not going to be able to do that either. I do think that Secretary Pompeo this morning, the new Secretary of State for President Trump, saying that he thinks the president will get out of the deal, sets up a possibility that there actually could be a revised deal before the May 12th deadline. Your thoughts?
Well, all things are possible, and certainly we've learned in the last couple of years to not count your chickens before they're hatched. I thought it was interesting with Merkel. She learned from Macron, which is you have to flatter this president. You have to warm him up. And I noticed a change in her tone from the last time they were together. Now, her position is much stronger now at home, so maybe she just feels more confident. But she was much quicker to flatter the president and praise his good things, which, of course, he always likes, and sets it up for potential success. Did she succeed in convincing him to remain in the Iran deal as constituted? Probably not. But we should also remember there are some intermediate steps here, one of which includes kicking it to Congress and the president saying, well, I'm not going to certify, but I'm going to kick it to the Senate, and I want the Senate to make a decision about this. Or, as you pointed out, doing an overlay deal. There's lots of options here. Probably helpful not to think of this as a yes or no question.
Let me also just mention North Korea here, and I'm not going to play a soundbite. I just want Ari to get your take. We all know what happened today. There was just a momentous meeting between Kim Jong-un and President Moon of South Korea as they met at the DMZ, crossing over the first time. And it really does feel like a chance for cautious optimism leading into a meeting. The president said they've narrowed it down to 2 sites for the meeting. Also interesting to me, one of the questions to the president was, have you spoken to Kim Jong-un? And he said, I'll decline to comment on that. And to me, I thought maybe he has.
Yeah, you know, I'm not in the cautious optimism category. I'm in the hard-nosed reality and cynical category because I've seen what North Korea does before. And they lie. They lie flat out. They lied flat out to the Clinton administration. They lied flat out to the Bush administration. And they lied out to the Obama administration. So are they really different now? I don't think so. So I think the hardest part about North Korea, South Korea, is going to be the day after the Trump meeting with President Un. What happens then? How do we verify? How do we know they're actually going to do the things they say they're going to do in the days, weeks, months, and years after that without giving things up first? That's the test.
Chris, in the remaining moments that we have, that's actually Jennifer Griffin, which we're going to get to in a moment. But Chris, in the, I felt like President Trump was really trying to be gracious and understanding that these leaders come to him and they have domestic political issues of their own.
Yeah, and her, as I said before, her situation is stronger. She won an election, or her party won an election that put her in much better stead. The price that she has paid, enormous price that she and her party has paid for the ultimately disastrous choice to take such a large number of immigrants, refugees from Syria all at once, almost ruined her. I think she's coming back a little bit. I think that puts her in a good position to be dealing with Trump and try to hammer out some of this stuff on trade, Iran, North Korea, et cetera.
Well, thanks for watching the press conference with me. Always a pleasure to have you both on the show. Ari Fleischer and Chris Stirewalt. Thank you.
You bet.
Reports that North Korea's Mountain nuclear test site collapsed after 5 nuclear blasts, raising questions about why the North really shut it down. Kim Jong-un agreeing last week to stop nuclear testing, saying, quote, the nuclear test site in northern area has also completed its mission. Jennifer Griffin joins us live from the Pentagon with more on this. Jennifer.
Dana, 2 separate groups of Chinese geologists say they have new evidence that the test site used by North Korea's Kim Jong-un may have actually collapsed after the last test on September 3rd, North Korea's 6th and largest test. They have suggested this may be the real reason Kim Jong-un has agreed to stop nuclear testing. Images from Digital Globe from before and after the September test show that Mount Mantap, the Mount Mantap site of the underground test, may in fact have collapsed. The test site, known as Punggye-ri, is 60 miles from the border with China in the northeast of the country. That 100-kiloton test in September, which was 10 times the size of North Korea's previous tests, occurred 2,300 feet underground. 8.5 minutes later, an earthquake of a 6.3 magnitude was recorded, followed by 3 more earthquakes. Scientists from the University of Science and Technology of China believe Mount Mantap actually collapsed. The head of U.S. Pacific Command, Admiral Harry Harris, who's slated to be the new U.S. ambassador to Seoul, has questioned Kim Jong-un's motives.
I do think that he is after reunification under a single communist system. So he's after what his grandfather failed to do and his father failed to do, and he's on a path to achieve what he feels is his natural place.
The research showing evidence of the collapse of the mountain where Kim Jong-un tested his nukes until September will be published soon in a peer-reviewed journal, Geophysical Research Letters. The Chinese geologists are also worried that the radiation released as a result of the mountain's collapse could drift into China, which is just 60 miles to the north. As of now, Chinese authorities say they have not detected an increase in radiation. A South Korean scientist has long warned that any more testing at that North Korean test site could trigger a volcanic eruption of Mount Paektu as well. Dana?
All right, Jennifer Griffin, thank you so much. And stick around. We'll be right back.